Welcome back to another edition of Our City. As we begin a new season of Our City here in 2012, I hope you've enjoyed the last couple of weeks where the State of the City address was on the show in this time slot. And as we kick off a new year, we're going to have some exciting shows going into the year, as well as the summer, and enjoying 2012 here in the city of Elizabeth. If you have any questions on the state of the city, you can call the Public Information Office at 820-4124 or my office at 820-4170. And if you want a copy of the State of the City address, please call 908-820-4124 and the Public Information Office can send you a copy of the State of the City speech. A few things going around the city of Elizabeth this week. Wednesday, February 8th at 9:30, I'm going to attend the DARE graduation ceremony at the Juan Pablo Duarte School, which is number 28, located on 25 First Street. On Thursday, February 9th at 2 o'clock, I'll join Union County, the Union County Civil War Sesquicentennial Committee, in the opening ceremonies for the Civil War Sesquicentennial Celebration, which is 150 years. This exhibit will commemorate Union County's role in the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. It will take place in the rotunda of the Union County Courthouse located on 2 Broad Street. We're also going to talk about it on this evening's show as well. On February 10th, I will join the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office on Aging, for a Seniors Valentine Day Luncheon celebration, and this will occur at the O'Donnell Dempsey Center located at 622 Salem Avenue. Will feature a dance competition. For more information, call 820-4044. And on Monday, February 13th, please note that City Hall will be closed in honor of the birthday of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. If you need more information concerning these events or any other events, please call our Public Information Office at 820-4124. This week's show, we're going to spend some time talking about, you may wonder why, but the USS Maine, an American battleship, sank most likely by an explosion in the engine room on February 15th, 1898, 114 years ago. It was sank in the Havana Harbor. William Randolph Hearst newspapers launched a campaign blaming the deaths of the 266 American sailors on Spain with the popular rally cry of "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain," setting the stage for what became known as the Spanish-American War. The cause of this explosion has never really been officially determined, and I'm pleased to be joined by our local historian to discuss this event of 114 years ago, Mr. Charles Shallcross. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mayor. Pleasure.
First of all, Charles, you're always considered our local historian. How'd you get that title?
You told me I was.
I told you was. But you have a background in the schools, right?
Well, yes, I taught history for many years in the public schools and middle school, and I've been active in local scene and history. I'm a past president of the Union County Historical Society, and I've done a lot of research on local history, and we live in a fascinating area which is rich in history, as you know, of all eras, and this focuses on one era, as will the Civil War display. So.
Now, why should Elizabeth, as I said in my opening remarks, why should we get involved in the USS Maine or even remembering what happened 114 years ago? That's
a good question, and the simple answer is if you look on the monument, and now you can see on the nicely refurbished monument, thank you very much, one of the sailors who lost their lives on the ship in that explosion was a resident of Elizabeth. He was a young man from Elizabeth. His name was Charles Fatty, and his father was a police officer, and they lived in the neighborhood where the monument is located. And the monument is located in Jackson Park, across from St. Patrick's. It's about 8 or 10 feet into the park. It's not a huge monument, but it's very important, and it memorializes a young man from our city who did give his life in that tragedy. And that was a terrific shock in those days. Even today, if something happened and we lost 266 sailors on one ship, that would still be a very, an outrageous event.
What happened with the USS Stark
Yeah.
out in the Gulf when that
Sure,
happened
sure.
10 or so years
Sure.
ago?
And even the Marine barracks, in Beirut that time. So whenever something like that,
1980s?
yeah, whenever something like that happens, it is a shock. And especially in that era, because we were not at war for a generation. It was, in our country after the Civil War, and that was a shock. And you mentioned William Randolph Hearst and the.
Well, Charles, before we get to that point,
Yeah.
you actually took the time, you wrote me a letter a couple of months ago
Yeah.
asking for the monument to be refurbished. And I have to say that when I received the letter, even though I've driven by and walked that park numerous times, I didn't exactly remember the monument because it's tucked in
Right.
and in faded
Right.
condition.
Yeah.
So how did the monument come about?
Well, as I said, the sailor from Elizabeth was lost on
Yeah,
the ship.
Charles Foddy was
Yeah.
lost on the ship. But
Yeah.
why
Well,
a monument
what's-
here? And he was only, 20 years old when he passed
Yeah,
away.
yeah. What started the whole thing, if I can go back to what led to my letter to you, during the summer I received a call from Mr. Mike Runge, who was the city archivist in Deadwood, South Dakota. Out of the blue, I got a phone call, and he said they were planning a monument to the Maine in their park, and he did a little research, and he found that very few cities have monuments to that event, commemorating that event. And Elizabeth was one of them. And I was familiar with the monument. I knew where it was. And I said, yes, we do have it. And he asked for photos of it, a little background of it. They were trying to plan theirs. So I did send it to him. And I went down to see it and to examine it more closely. And it did need a little work. There had been a little neglect over the years. And so I wrote to you about the monument and what had occurred, and that it would be nice to refurbish it. And it is one of our monuments of our city. We have many, as you know, and we should keep them in good repair. And so I was happy to see that the city did follow through and refurbished it and cleaned the base. It was covered with like a grayish paint and some graffiti, and it really looks nice today. And so I'm very pleased with that. We should not only remember the Maine, but remember the sacrifices of our
and remembering
military.
the sacrifices of those 266 sailors.
Exactly.
Now, that's an actual, you told me that bullet or that shell that's encased in there
Right.
is an actual shell from the USS Maine.
Yes, it is.
Any idea how we got it?
I don't know. Well, I guess there is a procedure. The city can request, from the Army or the military or the Navy to have a memento or, a piece of ordnance, and they usually will get it. For example, the cannons in Scott Park, the 2 cannons were requested, and they were actually, I read about them, they were signed over to the city on the last day of Theodore Roosevelt's term in office. That was one of his last acts as president, to sign over those cannons to Elizabeth to make a monument to Winfield Scott. But so they probably, obtained it through the.
Those cannons are Civil War cannons?
No, they're from the era of Mexican War, because that's appropriate. Because
Oh, the
Scott
1840s.
was a hero of the Mexican War, and he lived right across the street, so that's an appropriate spot for them. But the monument.
Are those cannons, were they real or were they a prototype of the Mexican?
Oh, they're real.
They're real cannons.
Yeah, they're real. Yeah, and it's an actual shell casing, in the top.
Yeah,
of the
back to that.
monument.
It's an actual shell casing in the USS Maine. Now, Mr. Fatty, who passed away, Charles Fatty, his father
Right.
was a Elizabeth policeman at the time.
Right, that's
correct?
what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe because of his father's prominence in the city.
Maybe he might have been well known in the neighborhood, and of course, after the Civil War, being at peace for so many years, that was a shock to lose a young man in that event. Because when the Maine was sent down there to sort of calm down tensions that were building at that point, Cuba was trying to break away from Spain, and there were a lot of tensions, and the Maine was sent down there from Key West to sort of be a presence and sort of be a calming influence, and no one expected it to be blown up, and so that was quite a shock. And so,
But it's suspect on how it was blown up, as I said in my opening remarks. The Hearst family did the rallying cry,
Right,
remember the
right.
Maine, the hell with Spain.
yeah,
but,
the phrase "yellow journalism" was
Yeah.
coined with
yeah,
that. I'm sure.
this stuff still happens
Yeah.
today in
Hey,
yellow,
the
right?
media, if they want to promote something, they will promote it. And
So
the
this
fact
could have
that
been-
it happened, they don't care how it happened, but the fact that it happened
Right.
was good enough for them to run with it. And eventually we did go to war.
This could have been an engine failure, an engine blow up.
Well, there are 2 main theories. That It might have been a mine that was placed under the ship, or it might have been the ships in the Navy in those days were steam powered, so they had coal bunkers. They went on coal. And sometimes the coal dust accumulates in the bunker and it will be like spontaneous combustion. It will explode. And the coal bunker, I don't know, it was very good design. The coal bunker was right next to the ammunition magazine of the ship. So one set off the other and the ship just blew up. And it was late at night, so a lot of the sailors were probably in bed. And they weren't given shore leave, so they had to stay on the ship.
Right.
They didn't want to make the situation worse, just the presence of the ship.
Now, through the Spanish-American War, the U.S. gained several territories that were crucial to the growth of what eventually led to the superpower status that we had in the 20th century and the 21st century. So, how's the war viewed through today's lenses? Do we look at it differently?
Yeah, not very positive. In those days, it was a race of the European nations getting colonies and parts of Africa, parts of course, the British Empire, India, and parts of Africa, and we got into it a little bit, and so the Spanish-American War was an example of that. We did take the Philippines. We held them till World War II, but Cuba we didn't keep, but and it led to I guess the prominence of a.
But we kept a part of Cuba.
Yes, luckily ironically,
Guantanamo Bay, which
we have a naval base on a country where we haven't had, diplomatic relations with for 50 years, but we have a naval base on the end of it. It's
And we have a lease on that land through.
Well, I don't think they're too concerned about dates on leases at this point. We're not going to pack up, but that's the irony of that. Yeah, it's very ironic. But so we did get some territory because we had to get into the act a little bit of that was the era of colonies, and everybody wanted to be, I guess, follow the example of England and get some colonies overseas. So we had our little adventure there, and as I said, it gave rise to a future president. Teddy Roosevelt made a name for himself in Cuba in the charge on San Juan Hill. So it was a popular war. People wanted to enlist, and because war in those days was an adventure. They didn't see it up close like today. It happened far away, and then the troops came home, and so every generation maybe would want its own adventure in war. The Civil War generation, because when the Civil War broke out, that was the quota was filled almost instantly from Union County and Elizabeth for the divisions and the regiments and so forth. So it was very popular.
Charles, we're going to take a break, run some commercials, and we're going to come back and talk about what we have planned for that day with your help. So please stay with us.
Sure.
After these messages, I'll be joined by Charles Shallcross and the planning activities we'll talk about for February 15th on what we're going to do in the city of Elizabeth about Remember the Maine.
The streets aren't the only place kids find drugs. Sometimes they find them at home. You can help stop prescription drug abuse by safeguarding medications in your home, encouraging friends and family members to do the same, and asking your pharmacist how to dispose of medications you no longer need.
Hello, I'm Mayor Chris Ballwage. Misusing medication can be dangerous, even deadly. To learn how you can prevent drug abuse in our community, please visit safeguardmymeds.org. Welcome back to our city, where I'm joined by Charles Shallcross, talking about an event that happened 114 years ago with a monument here in the city of Elizabeth to remember the Maine and a sailor on that vessel, Charles Fatty, an Elizabeth resident whose father at the time was an Elizabeth police officer. We're going to do some things on February 15th based on your conversation and your letter. I've talked to Joe Picaro, the teacher, the principal over there, and a history teacher. Right. And we're hopeful to have some type of lecture to the high school students before the ceremony, which at 11 o'clock, I hope you'll join us on that day.
I'd love to be there.
And we're going to just talk about it. And
sure.
What else do you think we should be doing that day? And use it as an educational tool?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great opportunity for that. A little background, and their history classes might be studying that era in U.S. history. Who knows? If they're close to it, or maybe they've covered it, and they probably didn't realize the significance of the monument and why it's there and the purpose of it. So as anything else. You pass by it every day, and
Now, Charles, we have a lot of monuments in this city.
Yeah.
And, which ones do you consider, from your historical perspective, are some of the more interesting monuments? You talked about the cannons. A lot of people think they're replicas.
No, they're real.
They're real cannons from the Mexican War.
They're siege guns, I believe is his name. And they're from the Mexican War.
And how did they get around? They got around by pulley, right?
Yeah, they were on carriages and caissons, whatever,
Right.
and the horses would pull them, or mules, whatever.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they used mules and horses in the beginning of World War I. I mean, it was a slow transition.
Right.
Yeah, sure. There's so many monuments to prominent people in our history. For example, I always liked, because I worked there for years, the monument to Mayor Mack. I wonder how many people realize who that is. It's on 3rd Street and Elizabeth Avenue, and there's a little triangle there, and there's a gentleman standing on a pedestal, and that's Mayor Mack, who lived nearby on 3rd Street, and he died in office in 1901. He was a physician. I believe he was a protege of Victor Moravlag, who was an earlier mayor and also a physician, a doctor, and he was very, very well liked and very well thought of, and he died suddenly, unexpectedly, and so they built that they put that monument there about 1908, and it's interesting about the monument because he lived in the port and he serviced the port, his patients, and so the monument is facing toward the port. It's
noticed that.
Not facing up 10. That's why it faces east to his neighborhood. Yeah, it was done purposely for that.
And he was a physician.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had Moravlag and Mack were two mayors who were also doctors. Because in those days it was a part-time job. Life was simpler, It wasn't, as you know, the full-time job it is today.
I know, and the term was 2 years back then.
Yeah, things were different, yeah.
And the city council back in the early 1900s was...
it was a large body.
20,
there
30
were,
people,
there were
18 people.
13 wards or more
Right.
at different times, depending on the charter or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, much simpler today.
They were all Irish, too, back then, if you look at their last names, Charles.
Yes.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what they were.
Well, it's a city of immigrants, and every group came in. And
the Irish immigrants seemed to get involved in the political process.
Well,
back in
they
that
had the
time.
one advantage because they knew the language coming in. The others, it took maybe a generation or two, but they knew the language, and they could get right involved in owning businesses, and a tavern or two, and getting involved in politics.
Now, Charles, the 9th annual tour of Elizabeth's theme this year is architecture.
Oh.
And you've been around the city. Some of your examples of some favorite art of the city's architecture.
Well, one example that comes to mind is a place I spent many years in, the old Baton High School. If people stop and take a look at the facade.
Now, was Batten the mayor?
No,
He was a doctor, though.
No. That's another
He was an educator.
interesting. No, he was a very wealthy man.
I'm going to get it right if I keep guessing.
Eventually, but well, he was an engineer. He was a mining engineer, and he was from Pennsylvania. He developed a coal breaking machine for the coal mines that they still use today, and became very wealthy. And he also designed water systems to feed water into cities. And so he came to Elizabeth and became very wealthy and successful, and acquired this mansion that was on that spot, the Dimmock Mansion, and he owned it for many years. And then when he wanted to get rid of it, he donated it to the city, and so the city named the school. And the first, up until 1913, they used his mansion as the high school, and then they built the current building in 1913, and it's a great old building. And the
Jefferson Building.
No, the Batten.
Oh, the Batten Building.
Yeah. That's where his home was. And the facade of the building, there's statues up there and everything. People don't realize, look up in the top of the building.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a great old building. So I taught there for many years. So
now, Charles, another thing you're involved in, you
Yeah.
spoke with Joanne Rajapi, is
Right.
this week's event at the Union County Courthouse. And I
Right.
mentioned it in the opening remarks. Tell us what it's going to entail.
Well, as you mentioned, it's the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. And although, the Civil War did not happen in this area, it's a little removed from the Revolutionary War. We were right in the middle of it, but the Civil War is a little removed. But we thought it would be a nice idea to commemorate it and to observe the anniversary in the rotunda of the courthouse. It's a place where many people pass through every day, and they get a chance to see. We've assembled a display of interesting artifacts, ranging from actual weapons to photographs to other artifacts. So we think it's going to be a very fine exhibition. And
Did you get involved in the planning of this? Who helped put this together?
Yeah, we had a committee. Joanne Rajapi, our county clerk, is the chairman of the committee, and we've been working for several weeks, couple months now, on planning this and gathering the artifacts and so forth. In fact, the other day I acquired 3 bullets, Civil War rifles bullets. There's big things, and so I brought them into the courthouse, and you have to go through the machine. So the officer was there, and I said, I have these, and he saw them right. He said, "Oh, look at that!" I said, he said, "Yeah, they're Civil War bullets," but I had no problem with them. They're harmless after 100 years, I guess, but he got a kick out of it.
Now, how long is this display going to be up?
It'll be up during the course of the next 2 or 3 years, actually.
It'll be up that long?
It'll be changing items in it. It'll be sort of a revolving display, evolving and revolving. So.
And do you have any of these artifacts besides the bullets personally, or were they acquired other means?
Some of them are from my collections or archives, or whatever. I want everyone to also enjoy the cannonball. We have a Civil War cannonball. I saw it in an antique place a couple of weeks ago, and it was for sale, but it was a lot of money. So I arranged to rent it for the display. So I left a deposit, and the dealer said, "Okay, keep it for a few months, bring it back." So
oh, really?
So I rented it for the display, better than buying it. But we have many other things, and we have a beautiful photograph of a reunion of officers, and in it is Mayor Moravlak, because he served in the Civil War as a surgeon.
Now, as a surgeon in the Civil War. Right. Now, Union Square, was that named after where the soldiers actually gathered to go off to war?
No, it just I guess it was a good place to put the monument,
So that's hence the name Union Square.
Yeah, Union. And there may even be a connection to the origin of the name of the county, because the county was fairly new at that time. And, the Civil War didn't happen overnight. It was building for many decades. And although we don't know the origin of the name of the county, the newest county in 1857, that could have been part of the reason to call it Union County, and thinking about maintaining the Union, because that was on people's minds. And
there's not Google in 1857. We don't know what everybody was thinking.
No,
and there's probably no written document.
No, there isn't. There is. We don't know where it came from. Actually, there's no official record, but it's probably a good guess. Yeah.
Charles, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the show.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure.
I look forward to chatting with you next week.
Okay, I look
Remember the
forward to
Maine and the St. Patrick students, as well as other people who may choose to attend.
Well, thanks for your interest in our local history, and
Thank
I
you.
know we can always count on you being supportive, and you have been in the past.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful for that, so I appreciate it, Mayor.
For Charles Shallcross from the Elizabeth Historical Society, I'm Chris Bolwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.